The party was loud, the music thumping through the crowded hall. Laughter and conversation filled the air as people moved around, cups in hand. Sarah maneuvered her wheelchair carefully through the crowd, her hands steady on the wheels. She was used to navigating tight spaces, but tonight was particularly challenging. A few people stepped aside politely, giving her space, but others barely noticed her presence. Emily, standing near the staircase with a few of her friends, spotted Sarah making her way toward the ramp. She had always been the type to seek attention, to get a reaction. A smirk curled on her lips as she nudged her friend. "Watch this," she whispered, her eyes glinting with mischief. As Sarah rolled past, Emily suddenly stepped in front of her, blocking her way. "Oh, sorry," she said with mock sweetness, tilting her head. Before Sarah could react, Emily's hands shot out, gripping the handles of the wheelchair. With a quick, forceful shove, she pushed Sarah backward right toward the staircase. Gasps and screams erupted as Sarah's wheelchair tipped over the edge. For a moment, everything seemed to move in slow motion. Sarah's arms flailed as she tried to grab onto something, but there was nothing to stop her fall. The wheelchair lurched forward, tumbling down step after step, the metal frame clattering loudly against the hard surface. People rushed toward her as she hit the bottom, her body sprawled awkwardly across the floor. Someone shouted for help. A few ran down to check if she was hurt. Meanwhile, Emily stood at the top of the stairs, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips, as if it were all some harmless joke. But then, as she noticed the horrified looks around her, something in her expression shifted, just slightly. The room fell into stunned silence, broken only by the sound of Sarah groaning in pain, and then the murmurs started. Someone cursed under their breath. Another person glared at Emily. "What the hell is wrong with you?" a voice snapped from the crowd. Emily rolled her eyes. "Relax, she'll be fine," she said dismissively, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "It's not like she wasn't already broken." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the onlookers. The tension was thick, suffocating, and then someone near the entrance whispered something that sent a visible shiver through the crowd. "She's here." Emily frowned, confused. "Who?" But then she turned, following the fearful gazes of those around her, and her smirk vanished. Standing in the doorway, eyes locked onto her with an unreadable intensity, was you. The moment you stepped into the room, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations hushed and people instinctively moved aside, as if making way for something, or someone, far more powerful than the chaos that had just unfolded. You weren't dressed in a robe or seated behind a judge's bench, but it didn't matter. Your presence alone carried the weight of authority, and it was clear that many in the crowd recognized exactly who you were. Emily, however, didn't seem to grasp the gravity of the situation just yet. She crossed her arms, her smirk returning, though it wavered slightly under the piercing stare you leveled at her. "Oh, great," she muttered. "More drama." You ignored her, stepping past the crowd and kneeling beside Sarah, who was still on the floor. Her face was twisted in pain, her breathing shaky. A few concerned bystanders hovered nearby, offering quiet reassurances. You checked her over, your voice low but steady. "Are you hurt?" Sarah winced but managed a small nod. I think so, my arm and my back." Your jaw tightened. You turned to the nearest person. "Call an ambulance." The words were sharp, leaving no room for debate. A girl fumbled for her phone, nodding quickly. Only then did you rise slowly, deliberately, and face Emily. "Did you do this?" Your voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that sent chills down people's spines. Emily scoffed, shifting her weight onto one hip. "Oh, come on. It was just a little push. She was in the way and I was just—" A harsh silence followed her words. The weight of everyone's stares pressed down on her, but it was your gaze that made her falter. A few people in the crowd exchanged nervous glances. One of them whispered something, their voice barely audible. That's Judge, your last name?" The words sent a ripple of recognition through the crowd. Someone inhaled sharply. Another person took an unconscious step back, as if afraid of being caught in the storm about to unfold. Emily frowned, clearly annoyed. "So what?" she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "I don't care if she's—" Then her friend leaned in, gripping her arm tightly. "Shut up," she hissed, panic creeping into her voice. "Do you even know who that is?" Emily's eyes darted around, confusion morphing into unease. Her smirk faded as she noticed the growing fear in the people around her. Someone else muttered, "She's not just a judge, she's the judge." Finally, Emily turned back to you, studying your face, searching for something, and then, all at once, the realization hit. Her mouth parted slightly. Her hands twitched at her sides. The cocky confidence she had worn so effortlessly only moments ago crumbled under the weight of her new reality. You took a slow step forward, and she instinctively stepped back. "I don't think you understand the severity of what you've done," you said, voice like ice. "That wasn't an accident. That was assault." Emily swallowed hard, her throat visibly constricting. I didn't mean—" "You meant to push her," you cut in sharply. "You meant to humiliate her, and now you're going to face the consequences." A small, strangled sound escaped her lips, but she had no words. Not this time. Because now, for the first time that night, Emily understood something very, very clearly. She had just made a mistake that she would never be able to take back. Emily's face paled as the weight of the situation settled on her. The murmurs around her had shifted from shock to something else, something she wasn't used to. Fear. Not fear of her, but fear for her. She had spent years walking through life unchallenged, pushing boundaries, bullying those she deemed weaker, and getting away with it. But now, standing in front of you, she saw something she had never encountered before. Absolute authority. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She tried to summon her usual smug confidence, but it felt like sand slipping through her fingers. Around her, the crowd remained frozen, their eyes darting between her and you. They were waiting for the hammer to fall. She took a hesitant step back. I didn't mean to." Your eyes locked onto hers, unblinking, and her words died in her throat. You didn't raise your voice, didn't lash out. But something about your steady, controlled presence was more terrifying than if you had shouted. "You didn't mean to what?" you asked, your voice cold. "Push her, laugh about it, or did you not mean to get caught?" Emily's breathing grew shallow. She had always thought of herself as untouchable, shielded by privilege and charm. But looking at you now, she realized neither would save her. Someone in the crowd cleared their throat hesitantly. "Judge, should we call the police?" Emily's head snapped toward the speaker, her eyes wide. "Wait, police?" Her voice cracked slightly, a tremor of real fear breaking through. "Come on, that's ridiculous. It was just a mistake." "A mistake?" Your tone was razor-sharp. "You shoved a disabled woman down a flight of stairs." Emily opened her mouth, then closed it again, floundering. I didn't think—" "No," you interrupted. "You didn't." You took a step closer and she flinched. "But that doesn't absolve you of responsibility." She let out a nervous laugh, a last-ditch effort to maintain control. "Look, I know you're, like, a big deal in court or whatever, but this isn't— You assaulted someone," you said bluntly. "That's a criminal offense, and you seem to have no remorse." Emily's stomach twisted into knots. I didn't mean to hurt her. I was just—" She looked around desperately, but her friends had backed away, their expressions unreadable. Even the ones who used to follow her every move were distancing themselves, sensing the inevitable fallout. Then, as if the universe had decided to seal her fate, the wail of sirens cut through the night. Emily turned, her breath catching. The red and blue lights reflected off the windows, flashing ominously. Your gaze didn't waver. "You think you're above consequences," you said almost thoughtfully. "But you're not, and tonight you're going to learn that firsthand." She spun back toward you, her eyes desperate. "Please," she whispered, her bravado gone. "I didn't mean to—" "Save it," you said coolly. The doors swung open, and two officers stepped inside. The crowd parted, revealing Emily standing alone, her body trembling. One of the officers surveyed the scene, then turned to you. "Judge, we got the call. What's the situation?" You didn't hesitate. "This young woman shoved my disabled sister down a staircase." Your words were precise, factual, carrying the weight of undeniable truth. I'd say reckless endangerment at the very least. Emily let out a sharp inhale. "Wait, no, please, I wasn't thinking." The officers exchanged glances, then stepped toward her. "Miss, we're going to need you to come with us." Emily's hands shook. No, this is crazy. Turn around," one of the officers instructed, already reaching for their handcuffs. The last thing Emily saw before her wrists were restrained was your face, calm, unwavering, and entirely unmoved by her pleas. And then, just like that, the girl who thought she could do anything without consequences was led away. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. Emily sat at the defendant's table, her once proud posture now slumped. Her perfectly styled hair was slightly disheveled, and the dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept well since the night everything fell apart. She had spent the past few days in a whirlwind of legal consultations, desperate phone calls, and public outrage. The story had spread like wildfire, and there was no escaping the consequences now. Sarah sat beside her attorney on the opposite side of the courtroom, her arm in a sling, a few bruises still visible. She didn't speak, but her eyes never left Emily, not with hatred, just quiet, measured strength. Then you entered. The sound of the gavel striking wood echoed through the room as the judge took their seat. It wasn't you. You had recused yourself from presiding over the case, ensuring that the legal process remained impartial. But still, your presence alone was enough to send a shiver through Emily's spine. You sat in the gallery, your gaze unreadable. The prosecution laid out the case with brutal efficiency. Security footage had captured everything: the smirk, the shove, the callous laughter afterward. Witnesses had come forward, testifying to Emily's long history of cruel behavior. And then there was Sarah's medical report: a fractured wrist, deep bruising along her spine, and lasting trauma from the fall. Emily's attorney tried to spin the narrative, painting her as a young woman who made a terrible mistake. But the evidence was too damning. The judge wasn't interested in excuses. Finally, the moment came. The judge peered down at Emily. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing is passed?" Emily hesitated, her fingers twisting together. She had spent days rehearsing a speech, one that was supposed to sound remorseful but not incriminate her further. But under the weight of the courtroom silence, she felt something crack inside her. Tears welled in her eyes, whether from genuine regret or sheer terror, it was hard to tell. I didn't mean to hurt her," she whispered. "I was stupid. I wasn't thinking. But I swear I didn't." The judge held up a hand, cutting her off. "Intent does not erase impact," they said firmly. "You showed no remorse in the moment. You laughed as your victim lay injured. Only now, when you're facing consequences, do you appear regretful. That is not remorse. That is fear." A choked sob escaped Emily's throat. The judge turned to Sarah. "Miss, your last name. Do you wish to make a statement?" Sarah exhaled softly and nodded. She turned to Emily, her expression steady. "I don't hate you," she said simply, "but I do pity you, because I can heal from this. I can move forward. But you have to live with what you did." Emily flinched, as if the words struck harder than any punishment the court could impose. The judge nodded. "Very well. Emily, last name, I hereby sentence you to appropriate punishment, community service, probation, or even jail time. This court will ensure that you finally understand what accountability means." The gavel struck the wood one final time. The case was over. As the bailiff approached, Emily looked around, searching for someone to save her, but her so-called friends were nowhere to be seen. Even her parents, seated in the back, looked more disappointed than anything else. And then she saw you. You didn't speak, you didn't move. You simply watched as she was led away, her fate sealed. And for the first time in her life, Emily truly understood what it meant to be powerless.